Hello everyone, welcome to this week's edition of Level Up with Laiken. If you are looking for tangible strategies to scale up your practice and the mindset you're going to need to do it, please hit subscribe. I interview a new lawyer every week who successfully implements the strategies that they have used to scale up their own practice. They're going to tell you all about it. And given this week's guest, everything I just said is going to sound totally hypocritical, but just bear with me. I'm going somewhere with this. This woman needs no introduction.
To you.
This woman needs no introduction. I swear to God, we're going to have it out after. We have Lourdes DeArmas from the Dolan Firm.
Hello.
Lourdes is my best friend. I didn't even get to the lyrics. I should have queued that up a little bit better. But Lourdes is my best friend, and just as importantly, Lourdes was my trial partner in the past. I get to tell everyone that I learned from the absolute best when it comes to trial practice. There was nothing that could happen in the courtroom that this woman could not handle. So I am blessed and honored, and for those of you who know me, I've been waiting a long time for this moment.
Me too.
I'm so happy to have you here.
We even have our red shoes on.
This the whole, what did she say? Tell people you're best friends without telling people you're best friends. This was not planned
not at all.
She even asked me yesterday what I was going to wear, and I was like, I don't think that far in advance. She's like, well, I don't want to wear the same colors as you. And
here we go.
Black and red. Anyways, Lourdes is a 20-year trial attorney. I have worked with her in the past, and you're probably wondering to yourself, why the hell is she on a show about entrepreneurs and solo practice? And I'm going to tell you why. Number one, this woman was on her own for 7 years before she went back to work for a large-scale firm, and she's going to talk about that. And the other reason is because although we are lawyers and we do run our own practices, we can't make money unless we know how to maximize the value of our cases. And this woman, as I have seen in real life, I'm not just saying this because I love her, knows how to maximize the value on cases that other people would think are what we like to say in our industry, shit cases.
Right.
So
we tried one.
Yeah, we did, actually. A few.
Quite a few.
Lourdes, please tell everybody why you became a lawyer and a little bit about your beginning.
Oh boy. I always wanted to be a lawyer. I mean, there was never really a question. I mean, my mom said that I have two sisters, an older and a younger, and when we were younger, you know, they'd be off playing with her Barbies at some part of the house, and I would still be playing with my Barbie doll, but the teddy bears were the jury, and the Barbie was making, you know, the arguments in front of a jury. So there was never...
Are you serious?
Yeah, I know.
I didn't even
nerdy,
know that.
Right? But I think that it also goes back, you know, to my dad. God love him. My dad, there was never a law that my dad did not want to break.
I like him.
Yeah. You know, and he was connected in the Cuban, you know, organizations.
The special groups?
The special groups, you know. He died 23 years ago, so I'm not slandering my own dad. But anyways, so growing up, seeing that, feeling that, I was always the law and order part of my family, even at a young age. So I always wanted to be a prosecuting attorney. It just didn't end up that way. When I graduated from law school, I got hired by the DA, but there was a hiring freeze for about 5 years. And then, you know, it was just a natural progression. You know, I think my yearbook in high school said, you know, most likely to become a lawyer and then president. In 2016, I guess I, you know, missed that ball. Trump kind of trumped me.
I am not surprised to hear that.
Yeah.
And I love this little known fact about Lourdes. A lot of people don't know it, but Lourdes was not only brilliant and voted most likely to become a lawyer and president, she was also Miss Burbank. And because of that, I get all these fabulous makeup and hair tips. Like, I've seen this girl go from like spa to glamour in 15 minutes. I was like,
I did learn a thing or two.
Okay, so we talked about your beginnings, why you wanted to become a lawyer, and then the hiring freeze at the DA's office, and then you end up working for defense.
Yeah.
You started in the defense, like so many of us do. And you did that for
5 years.
Okay. And why did you leave that?
You know, it got to the point, I was trying a lot of cases, which was awesome. I mean, I keep
You know how
saying,
rare that is for a woman
yeah.
in the defense to be trying cases?
There was reasons, but also, I worked for the biggest at the firm, but also, he taught me a lot. I remember I was a first year, and he came into my office and threw his hand across my desk and knocked everything off and said, "A disorganized desk is a sign of a disorganized mind. Get it together."
Well, that was not a hostile way of handling that situation at all, was it?
But, he did teach me in his own way how to work up a case A to Z. You could not miss a beat. And it wasn't
about the desk thing.
Yes. Well, you've seen my trial, the table, counsel table at trial. Mm-hmm. It's like now immaculate. I mean, I have OCD, and he kind of developed that, but that's, post-traumatic stress syndrome of a different kind. But, it was never cookie cutter. You had to really look at each case, even on the defense, and what you got in discovery and in litigation, how does that translate into trial? Mm-hmm. And not meaning taking shortcuts. It was how to critically look at a case and have an eye for trial, whether or not it's settled. And that was invaluable early on, because I carry that now.
And you do, because you actually taught me that lesson.
Yeah.
You said never work up a case as if you're planning on it settling. You work up a case as if it's going to go to trial. And then if it settles in the meantime, great. So you do that, and then you left that, and you went to the plaintiff side.
I just didn't go to plaintiffs. I went to like a hard area of law. It was insurance bad faith, and it was first party bad faith, and class action. So it was very intellectually difficult to make that transition. It wasn't that I went from, med mal defense to med mal plaintiffs or even PI. It was like completely different area of law. And it was humbling. I thought I was a badass writer. I won every motion that I could write at La Follette, and then all of a sudden, everything I wrote was redlined and torn apart. But, I learned a lot from it. And it made the transition over to PI that much easier, because I had the foundation of, working hard. And these were clients that were really injured. It wasn't, that we took, a class action case where somebody, and we did, but it wasn't, that somebody paid a little too much. They were, significant injuries and justice that we needed to, obtain. One was, a group of students that went to a trade school to become radiological technicians, and by the time they graduated, the school wasn't accredited. And that's the difference between $18 an hour and $40 an hour, and all their student loans. And we did a great job, and we got great settlements for all of them, but it was hard.
Have you ever tried a bad faith case?
No.
So that's a really interesting area of law that I just started really delving into yesterday, and I'm actually glad that I'm forced to do that. Because, and you know how I feel about this, all the PI attorneys that demand the policy, and then the carrier doesn't pay, and they're like, oh, it's an open policy. No, you're exposed to bad faith. No, it doesn't work like that. And I'm literally tearing apart a case right now where I'm looking at, and it was the law apparently has recently changed in terms of bad faith. And it's like blowing my mind, but thank God I now have this information so that when I go to make my demands, I make sure it is bad faith if they don't pay the policy. But
and in those cases, the ones that we dealt at Quisenberry, they're first party. So, for example, you got medical insurance, and you got sick, and all of a sudden, cancer, and the hospitals are billing a lot. Then the insurance goes back and does what's called post-claims underwriting. They go back and see if you lied in any way, and then they cancel your policy retroactively.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so those were the kind of cases we dealt with. Or, homeowners policies where there'd be massive flooding in the house because a pipe burst or something, and all of a sudden the insurance says we're not covering. So it was, people that were injured that needed some sort of remedy then and there. Making the switch to PI and discovering the third party that I'm in the same boat as you. It's like, take a good deep look at what's going on, and does it translate, and the difference between first party and third party, with first party, you get the punitive damages, which, is significant, which is why attorneys get it. In third party, you cannot, assign away the the emotional distress or the punies.
So I have more questions about that, but that's not really the point of the show. So I want to get into something else, which does tap into the entrepreneurial center of this show.
Okay.
And I don't know, I know when you came to Alder and we worked together there, you definitely were known, but I feel like your career and everything that you've done finally got the recognition it deserved during that time, okay?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I know you have a question, but I think I always said that, I analyze everything like as in basketball. So, I had the skills, had the talent, but I was on JV. And then as soon as I got to Alder, I was on varsity and in the starting lineup, which made it completely different.
I love your sports analogies.
Yeah, well.
I just have to go with the context because I really don't know what you're talking about, but I think I know what you're talking about. I gloss over all your sports social media posts. I'm like, okay, just skip to the next one. That one might make sense. You were on your own for 7 years.
I was.
And I think that is relevant to talk about because there are, interestingly, I've interviewed enough people to know that some people resonate with the business aspect of running a firm more than they resonate with being a lawyer. And I think that's a great position to be in if you have the resources and the infrastructure to support that. So if they've got lawyers that are there and a staff that is able to pick up the slack and run the cases, I'll give you an example, Brett Sachs.
Oh yeah.
Brilliant pre-lit machine. Brilliant pre-lit machine. Everybody's got a role. It just rolls, right? Litigation firm, Simon. Man, trying a case for them it's a frigging pleasure. It's almost unrealistic because everything just rolls. So if you want to, work on the marketing and the business strategy and all that, you've already laid the infrastructure. But what if it's the other way around, right?
Yeah.
And there are some lawyers who have less so, who have talked about how they actually love lawyering more than running a business. But you, due to life circumstances, and I find it near and dear to my heart because it's only you and Dave Reinhardt that I know as single parents have walked the path that I am now walking in. You told me stories that scared me so bad before I opened my own, because when I first went to you, you were the first person I told and you were like,
yeah.
I could see the PTSD in your heart and you're like, Ash, I don't know if you want to do that. And I remember hearing the stories of, about having to sell things and that really scared me and delayed my start. So I'd like you to talk about that for people who do need to hear that realistic side of things to truly assess whether or not you want to run a firm, whether you want to be an entrepreneur, or whether you feel like you have no choice but you'd rather be a lawyer. So please.
Well, I think I have to start how I ended up on my own. Quisenberry, I loved him. I probably would have retired there. Quiz, if you're listening, it's true. But he decided to retire. I mean, we settled a couple of, $9 million settlements, and it was just the right timing for him, and he decided he was going to close down. And so we were given a month's notice, Then I went to another.
A couple $9 million?
Yeah, a couple of $9 million.
Well, I might consider it at that point.
I know. But yeah, and he was brilliant. He had nothing, else to prove, and, he wanted to dedicate his time to his family. I do not begrudge him that. The next plaintiffs firm I went to absolutely imploded. I mean, all you have to do is Google it. And it was around, not a great time economically. It was during, the Great Recession. 2008, 2009.
How scary.
And it is scary, and once you hit a certain year, attorneys are very marketable to firms between 4 and 7 years.
That's the sweet spot.
That's the sweet spot. When you hit 9,
they're afraid you're going to want more money than they're willing to pay.
So, that firm closed down. It was near Christmas. I had no employment options at that time. I was a part of CALA, but not really a part of CALA. I didn't know that I could reach out to a Mike Alder or a Gary Dordick or, have any lifelines.
So I had a little girl too.
And I did. She was, 9 years old, 8, 9 years old. And there was a few attorneys that had pre-lit shops that didn't know how to try cases, then I would take their cases to trial. So it kind of just happened. It wasn't something that I aspired to be on my own. It was something out of necessity. And, there were scary times, like you said. But I did not have a business mind, right? I went from settlement to settlement, trial verdict to trial verdict, picking up cases 2 weeks before trial without an expert, without any witnesses, and sometimes without a jury, having to figure it out, how to just go in and do it, knowing that the 30% that I was being paid off of that verdict was money to feed my kid and pay for her schooling. And, there were times, like you said, that, the lights were going to be shut off at 5. They were going to be shut up at 5 o'clock, and knowing that I have a settlement coming in, but the check hasn't come in yet. And, I've begged and pleaded with, Burbank Water and Power as much as I could. And then, my grandmother came over and was like, "You got gold jewelry?" And I was like, "Yeah." And we went, and it was $800 that we got back. It was $500 that I owed Water and Power, and it was like a lot of that. It was feast or famine. And because it was feast or famine, it wasn't anything that interested me. I didn't put the time or energy into the marketing, into building a business.
Because your mindset was in survival.
Yeah. There was no JHQ.
Rather than, it was more in survival rather than this is my baby, let's watch it grow. Right? And believe it or not, I did not know this, but do you remember that time I called you and I was like, the rent was due. I literally went broke at like
10 a.m.
Yeah, I was broke. I had to pull together all of the money in all my accounts just to pay the rent, right?
Yeah.
And I was still short. And the landlord was texting me and he was like, today's the first. And I'm like, dude, I've never stiffed you. But in the back of my mind, I was like, what am I gonna do, right? I too knew I had a settlement check coming, but it hadn't come. And the thing got delivered by 1 p.m. that afternoon, and I went and took it to the bank at 2 p.m. and I came back, and I remember Cody tried to talk to me, and I was like, Cody, I need to take a walk.
Yeah.
And I had to go take a walk, and I called you on my walk, and I was like, Lou, I went broke and then deposited more money into my business account than I ever had in the same day.
Right.
Like, it was so heavy, and that stress, that stress, it's not even like making the paycheck stretch until the 1st or the 15th. Like it's a totally different type of stress. But you were working more in survival mode. How am I going to get through this month, rather than looking at it like, how am I going to grow this thing in 3 years? So I wonder if you ever truly wanted, because you were getting creative at that time too. You were doing the
attorney boot camp.
Yeah.
I started a small side company called Attorney Boot Camp. I got the trademark for it and did 2 seminars a year. One in June and one in December, where I knew I needed more money and didn't know, around at the beginning of summer and around Christmas, trials aren't really, everyone keeps continuing them because of vacation and the holidays. And we would do a seminar for about 100 students. I'd charge, $250 to $500, and I'd make my money. And it was like, the whole premise was kind of like, you're going to war. How to teach, I think my logo was, law school taught you how to take the bar, but we'll teach you how to go to trial, or something corny like that. And we had like,
I'm surprised you shut
dog
that down.
tags and things like that.
There is nothing like that. I mean, we have trial academies, but we don't have any academies that actually teach you how to be
a trial attorney.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before trial, like, you learn on the job. But man, like, if I had known just becoming a brand new attorney that there was a course I could take to speed up my success, have you ever thought about?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we could do it together.
Yeah, like, Vanessa's older now, so I'm wondering.
Yeah, and I really, that part I really loved. I mean, that's where I started to realize that I loved teaching. I loved speaking and just, helping people. But then again, it was survival mode. So I'd do the seminar. I wouldn't really follow up with the participants. I wasn't thinking about marketing. It was about, how was I going to pay the bills, and how was I going to have my daughter, who was in elementary school, not realize that there was no money coming in, and I'd love to say that I wasn't business minded, but I bought myself a safe, and all the money that I would get in, I would calculate the bare minimum of what I needed per paycheck. So, and I put everything in an envelope. And every 15 days, I would go in and pull out an envelope and deposit that in the bank. So I never lived above my means. So even when I got, I settled a case for $350,000 and I would get my attorney's fees from it, that would go into the safe. And I never, went on vacations or bought anything lavish because I never knew when the money was going to come again.
Right.
And again, I think fast forward, had that happened to me now, I know that there's people I could reach out to.
Yeah.
There's JHQ. I mean, what an amazing organization to be an entrepreneur and have kind of like you're in a bubble as opposed to on an island by yourself.
Okay. So, but the interesting thing and the unique thing about your story while you were on your own is that you weren't just focused, like most people who are starting out their firms are not focusing on trials because number one, you've got the costs associated, and I know that you worked out a deal, which is very similar to what I've done, where you're trying the case for a firm, they cover the costs. But verdicts don't necessarily get paid immediately. They have the right to appeal it. Sometimes you can negotiate it. Sometimes the jury doesn't like your client.
Nope.
We've had that happen.
Yes,
that sucked. So they actually give your client less as a kind of like a little like F you, I don't believe you. So at the end of the day, most people want to gear themselves towards settlements because at least that's guaranteed money. And that's one thing with a case that's iffy. Like we tell our clients, like, hey, this is guaranteed money. So think very carefully before you deny this because you never know. I always say you never know what's going to happen when you put your case before 12 people that are your peers. You never. No. They've considered things that we were like,
right.
I didn't even know that was important. But you did it, and that tells me that you, deep down inside your soul, were a, tried and true trial attorney. But as a young female attorney, it's hard to get cases, it's hard to get trial opportunities, right? It
is, but, there's very few cases that were mine that I funded to go to trial. The majority, there was a couple of...
But you did it knowing that you could... My point is the settlements are safer than the verdicts,
no, they are.
And yet you went for the verdict. So did you do it because you wanted to be a trial attorney? It's not the most lucrative thing in the world at the level you were at.
It's not, but just real quick, a lot of the cases that I took to trial weren't cases that were given to me to settle. They were given to me to take to trial.
Which is my point. You focused on that.
Yeah. The cases that I did have from the beginning that I could focus on probably settling, I, at that time especially, I was a horrible negotiator. So even... Yes.
You?
Yes.
What?
I didn't even, know the beginning of how to deal with, claims adjusters. Listen, when I went out on my own, I had no idea about PI. I learned PI by myself without any resources. I was doing insurance bad faith and class action.
I have seen you get pissed off at defense counsel. I have seen you dig your heels in.
Yeah, now.
I'm like, she looks nice, but you bring out that Cuban attitude, man. Run.
I know.
But those cases that you were trying in the beginning for trial, right? They probably were not.
No, they probably could have settled if I was in the right mindset.
Or when you were trying them, the reason you were trying them, is it because the cases had problems?
Oh yeah, of course. Any case that you take to trial has a problem, otherwise it would settle.
And those are the cases you were investing your time and energy into. Why?
It's twofold. One, it's all I really knew how to do, right? It was my fallback. Even though I was new to the area of law, I think that if you're a trial attorney, you can pick up and try almost any case, right? It's dealing with a jury. It's dealing, with the rules it's the same rules of evidence, no matter what case you're trying. It was my safe zone.
Okay.
It's what I knew I could do to provide for my family.
All right.
Right. There were some cases, and then the second is, and I still have that mentality today, which is probably why don't have my own plane. It's about the client. It's about justice. It's about that little girl thinking she wants to be a DA because she wants to, save the world, put the bad guys away. And I carry that till today, and you've seen it, and we've done it together, where, we take a vested interest in our client and who they are and what they feel, and at the end of the day, win or lose, because we went through that journey with them, they know that we fought hard.
How many cases did you try with La Follette?
Like, I would say 20 to 30.
Got quite a bit of trial experience before you were taking on those cases on your own.
Oh yeah, that's what I said. It was like my safe house. I could walk in. It was like, I won't use basketball, I use bike. It was like riding a bike, right? It may not have been the best bike, but you can get on it and ride it.
Yeah.
And that's what I knew how to do.
Okay. How much of that did you learn, not by watching La Follette, but how much did you learn just being in the courtroom and making the mistakes?
Oh, I think everything I learned I learned the technical aspect by second chairing and being minimally involved in defense, but the skill, I learned just doing it. I mean, my picking a jury, jury selection evolved tremendously in the time that I was by myself. I mean, at the beginning, it was like, I'd do the polling. How many of you agree that blah, 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 blah? Until I realized, for me, it's not effective. For other attorneys, it's effective. For me, what's effective is to zero in on one person, ask them before, who else agrees with that? More conversational. I learned that I couldn't do what other people do, and I had to stop trying. I was trying.
And own your own style.
Yeah. And make mistakes. And that's when I really learned that using the big words, which, in writing I can, but speaking I mispronounce them all, and trying to impress opposing counsel and the judge wasn't really getting me anywhere. It was the jury that that needed to understand the information. And how do they understand the information? Do I use a bunch of medical terminology that I'm going to butcher, or do I have the doctor on the stand teach me so that I could explain to them at the same time?
You taught me a very good lesson in trial. You taught me to dumb it down, and you told me that even if I was struggling with pronouncing a medical term, mispronounce it and let the doctor correct it, because it will endear you to the jury, because they don't know how to pronounce it either, right? So it puts you more on a level that's relatable to them. And the reason I'm asking you this question is because, one, I've seen you in trial, but by the time I saw you in trial, I don't want to use the word seasoned, but you already had a technique. You already knew, like, there were things that the defense would do, and I'm like, crap. And you were just like, no, Your Honor, A, B, C, D. And I was like, oh my God, that was brilliant. Like, and I asked you, how did you know to do that? And you're like, I've done it a million times, okay?
Yeah, and it's, I think that, this last weekend at Mardi Gras, Gary said it best. It's not that, when you get to a certain level, you're smarter. It's that you've worked hard. So, and the experience, I've seen it. It's not that, it was a brilliant, move that I had to make. It was, I've made that move before, and now I'm making it better.
Right. So for people who, because we have a lot of young gunners in GHQ, a lot of young people that want to be Lourdes DeArmas in 20 years. In terms of preparing for trial, getting their head right, facing the fear, like, nobody wants to look like an idiot, and there's nothing worse than leaving the depot going, oh,
and I did that recently.
Asked that question, or even the nightmare situation where we have like the most important witness on the stand, and we don't ask the question that would elicit the information to satisfy one of the elements that's going to be on the verdict form, and then you got to figure out. Nobody wants to feel that, right? That's pressure that some people won't try cases over, because trial is, you can't f up.
Yeah,
you can. What would you recommend to young trial attorneys who want to try cases but are afraid? What would you tell them? And
we've had this discussion before. you can't take shortcuts to be a trial lawyer. You just can't. You have to know that you have to put the work in.
But everybody says that. What does that mean?
That means, still to this day, I have, a team. There's 3 attorneys on, 3 of us on my team, 3 attorneys on my team, 2 paralegals. And even when we were together and we had paralegals and, other staff and a secretary and other staff, law clerks and things that could help, I still pull my own exhibits. I make my own exhibit list. I make my own witness list. I don't rely on a paralegal or an assistant to pull the exhibits that I'm going to need at trial and then expect to show up the first day of trial knowing what's in those books. You can't focus on the shit that the defense is going to throw at you if you're learning your own case. I know every piece of evidence that's in our exhibit binders. I don't even have to look at them to know what exhibit, and I know that's a little crazy. I mean,
that is insane.
I know what exhibit is what.
And by the way, for anybody who wants to try cases, this woman is extraordinarily organized. We've got the exhibit list where we mark it all. Those are things that I had to learn from you. I didn't know that.
A tracker, an exhibit tracker.
But you have a lot of templates. So if anybody needs, if anybody wants access to Lourdes's trial templates, just reach out to me and I will send you the link to the folder where I keep all of them.
And the best template I think I have is not only the exhibit tracker, because then what was not only what was introduced.
I think the mill tracker too.
That's the one. I think that's the most important one that people don't realize.
Because you're going to forget what the judge ruled on, and you need to be able to say, "Hold on, Your Honor, objection, mill number 1," or whatever, and you need to know what that ruling is.
Yeah, and I say we because it got developed with us trying cases.
I think it got developed during McCallion.
Yeah, it has the list of all the motions in limine, whether they were opposed or not, and what the judge ruled on each, and that stays on the counsel table. So whenever there's an objection, we refer it. Your Honor, you made a ruling on motion in limine number 15.
You also designed Post-it notes for jury selection. So like when you try a case and the court gives you that sheet and they go through the questions with each juror, Lourdes has got those questions actually pre-printed on a Post-it note, so you don't have to write it down. You just check it off or fill in the quick answer. It's brilliant, and I'm happy to share that as well.
Yeah, and it's all about being organized and being prepared. I think those are the two. If you can master those two, which those are in your control. It's not about knowledge. It's not about memorizing the Code of Civil Procedure or the rules of evidence, which, eventually it's important, but you'll know which rules are important. But if you can master being prepared and being organized, the confidence level walking into the courtroom is much different.
Okay, so know your case before you walk in.
Yeah.
Does it get easier over time?
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
Okay. So when you think to yourself, you've got a massive 3-week trial coming up, it doesn't scare you anymore because you know what to do.
It excites me.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what to do, right?
Yeah.
So if you were to help give a young trial attorney like a checklist of what to do, so because young attorneys, right? Like I learned some of the evidence code from you, right? When other people were making objections or you were making objections, I'm like, yeah, that was good. And I also have this handy little booklet that I take in. But anyways, for things aside from the Code of Civil Procedure, things aside from the evidence code, which you do have to study, but I think you also learn that stuff when you're using it. What would be a checklist that you would give to someone young who's going into trial so they could feel that at least they've got the preparation aspect down? One, go through pull and organize your own exhibit binders.
Yep.
Go through all, I know one thing I learned that was very valuable, don't rely on medical summaries. Look at the damn medical records because there will always be a mistake in there. There was one in one of the cases we tried where they found, we didn't put the exhibit binders together, but there was something that was in there. It shouldn't have been in there from a factoring company.
Oh, yeah.
And the defense caught it. And the next thing we know, we're in a 402 hearing, and there's the guy from the factoring company is being subpoenaed to go to court, and we're like, what?
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah, it was insane.
That was insane.
But you have to go through every medical record. You got to know. We were able to fight some of the defense when they were like, no, it's not CRPS, it's Guillain-Barré syndrome,
Yeah,
or
whatever.
it's this
Lupus
or lupus, and we already knew in the record that it had already been ruled out, that they had already considered that, so we were able to go, nope, this doctor already did it, right?
Yeah.
And you also keep templates of very relevant case law. Sanchez.
I do. Yeah.
You have the pocket brief ready to go. So knowing your exhibits, looking at the medical records, you page line your own depots?
I do. You know, I don't take, when it comes to trial, and I know that I put a lot of work on myself, but I don't take shortcuts. I summarize. I have my own medical record summary. And I do my own page lines. There's no way for you to know what's in a deposition, especially one that you haven't taken, to know what's in it if you're relying on somebody else, or what's important, right? Because what's in it and what's important that's in it are two different things. And I do that myself. But I think the best advice that I could give a young attorney going into their first trial is to use the Redwells.
Yeah.
I get a Redwell for every witness in court, and it has their depot, the page line summary, and I pull copies of the exhibits that are in the binders already bait stamped that I'm going to use with that witness. And then I have a hard note, like a piece of paper, but it's harder. It's kind of like craft paper, I guess. And I do my 10-point outline of what I need with that witness.
The cards. The card stock.
Yeah, it's card stock. Yeah. That's it. And I have that each. So at night when I go home, I only take the Redwells of the witnesses that I need. And I have, you know, multiple sets of the exhibit binders. I have one in the courtroom that's on the desk that's nice and neat. I have a second one in case things need to be pulled. And then I have one at home. That way I'm not carrying everything. But the Redwells I think are important because you have everything that you need for that witness, including the exhibits that you're going to mark and move into evidence, so you're not scrambling. Because the worst thing you can do is to scramble trying to find that exhibit in, you know, all those binders. And it also keeps you more focused on what you need with that client. But you said something at the beginning that's important. If you're trying your first case, memorize the jury instructions.
Oh yes, you know what you need. But you also mentioned that when you use the card stock and create your outline for the witness, you only do up to 10 bullet points.
Yeah, that's it.
So you are not marrying yourself to a script.
No.
Which is, I did that during one of our trials and I ended up walking away from it. But you start your closing PowerPoint before we even walk into court.
Yeah.
And then you make notes on the card stock of key things that they said, and then you put that into the closing PowerPoint so that by the time the night before your closing argument, you're just refining.
Right.
And every day you would add pieces of the testimony that were relevant, that met the, you know, the jury instructions. You do need to memorize the jury instructions. Otherwise, how do you know what testimony you're eliciting that's going to actually matter?
What you need to prove.
Yeah. So you would do all of that, and then I need to remember that because I saw you do that. And then whoever you were trying the case with, you'd get together with them the night before closing, and you would go through it together to make sure that you're not missing anything. So I think you're saying don't cut the corners. Do the majority of the work yourself so that you know the case better than anybody else. Which I think is also very important because you don't know how prepared your opposing counsel is going to be.
That is true. And we've been kind of lucky that they have been, you know,
but we didn't know that.
No.
So.
And, you know, most often than not, I am either the most prepared or one of the most prepared attorneys in the room, even with co-counsel, except, you know, like with you. If you think that it's just me and Ashley that get that prepared, I tried a case with Chris Dolan before the shutdown, and it was the first time. I mean, I had just been at the firm for a couple of months.
I don't think I'm ever going to reach that level.
No, and I don't.
Insane.
Yeah, and you know, I never thought that I'd find somebody that would match my energy. You know, and it is insane. I'm not advocating that you do the same thing, but Chris Dolan, at the level that he's at, is still pulling all-nighters, is still, you know, getting prepared. I was doing the opening, and, you know, we ran through my opening And he went through my PowerPoint. He's like, is there anything that you need in your PowerPoint, that you think could make it better? Can I help you? And he ran my PowerPoint while I was doing my opening.
So he's true teamwork.
He is true teamwork. And the work, we don't go to sleep until the work gets done. And if someone like Chris Dolan is still working that hard, it tells you that if you're a newbie, you can't cut corners because you think you can. You can't cut corners because you saw, Gary or Arash speak at some, seminar, and you're just going to emulate what they did. You can't.
Yeah, don't emulate.
You can't cheat your way.
I think emulating someone else is doing such a disservice to you.
Yeah.
Because I think, I felt like our energy, we almost had like good cop, bad cop.
We did.
Like you were such a mama bear, and I loved it when you did voir dire because like the jurors would want to hug you. And then I'd come in for the witnesses and I would go in for the kill and sit down, right?
And your openings are spectacular.
Stop it.
No, it's true.
Thank you. But I want to ask you this question because if somebody like me were to stay up for 48 hours in a row, like I would die, right? Because I know I need sleep. Now, now it's necessary because there were, sometimes, during McKinley we'd have to go back and we would be writing briefs for the judge the next day because the defense attorney was pulling so much crap. We never knew walking into court in the morning what the hell was going to happen that day.
But now imagine, had we not been prepared going into that trial, how much more work we would have had to do.
Yeah, but my question to you is, assuming those crazy circumstances don't happen, right?
Right.
In order to be successful, do you have to stay up 48 hours in a row during every trial?
No.
Is there another way to do it to where you can be a successful trial attorney and not get sick?
Yeah, start
early.
When you get the case.
Yeah. Okay.
Start looking at it for trial. When you're taking the depositions, start numbering. And I don't quite do this because, again, we get the cases halfway through. Sometimes we get it at the beginning, sometimes we get it close to trial.
Right.
But if you get a case from the beginning, and you're of the mindset, okay, every deposition that I'm going to take, I'm going to start numbering them.
Okay.
And every depo, so the first depo, it's exhibit 1 through 10. The next depo, you start at 11, right? You're numbering all of your exhibits and you're cross-referencing, the exhibits that you used before. Now, whether or not it's in the order you want it for trial, you kind of have your exhibit binder done. And if you start summarizing or page lining the depots as they come, you're getting all of the work done ahead.
I see. Interesting. Okay.
If you start preparing, whiteboards.
Oh, yeah.
Invest one.
Yeah.
Paint your white wall with the whiteboard. We whiteboard every single case. And it's the easiest way to get organized. I divide it between liability and damages. Who are the witnesses I'm going to use on liability? They get listed. What are the exhibits that I'm going to use to prove my liability? They get listed. What are the problems? And then we flag those. And then I go to damages and do the same thing. And also witness list. We've been lucky because we've been so organized that rarely we've had to call a witness out of order in the order that I mentally want them to come in, right? So our stories have been more or less complete from beginning to end. Sometimes that doesn't work, but it doesn't work because you're not thinking about it with enough time to schedule your experts and making sure that they fit in the timeline that you want. Doing trials at last minute, although I have, unless you're experienced,
really
it doesn't
stressful.
work. It doesn't work.
And the other thing that I've learned also from working with you is for the bigger, more I'm getting ready to try a case. There's thousands and thousands of pages of medical records.
You don't need them all.
No, and I'm not going to go through thousands and thousands of pages, but I do know what's in them in terms of what the pre-existing are. But I'm also not going to try that case by myself.
Right.
I think that's the surest way to trial, what you call trial malaise. I could not function for 2 weeks after one of those cases that we tried. So I think that, making sure that you don't be stingy in terms of the fee. Make sure that if you have somebody who wants to try the case with you, enlist the help, right? Yeah. Enlist the help, give someone else a shot at it. I'm definitely doing that with this case coming up. I don't have much time left with you, but I do want to ask you, so there's 2 more questions that I ask every guest.
Uh-oh.
One of them I know for a fact that you don't know what I'm going to ask. But I have like 15 different answers to it, just because I know you. New attorney comes to you saying, hey, I'm really thinking about starting my own firm. Now, considering the fact that you've done it and then you went back to big law, what are the 3 tips that you would give a young attorney who is thinking about opening their own practice?
To call you.
Oh.
Would be tip number 1.
Watch my show. I've only got like, I don't know, 20 episodes
I'm
on
done.
it.
Tip 1, 2, and 3, call Ashley.
Okay.
No, I mean, honestly, I would have them come to you.
Okay.
You know, you kind of quit without a plan and then did it, you know, and now you're leveling up with Laiken, you know. And to not to do it on your own, to realize that you can't do it on your own, at least not in the beginning. Reach out and get help, and you know, join something like JHQ or any of the other organizations, or CALA, and get on the listserv. And don't be afraid to let other people know that you don't know what you're doing, because there's 1,000 people that will jump in and will help you.
Yeah,
I think
people
that's a
want
mistake
to help.
I made.
Yeah, people
I didn't
want
know.
to help. Like, a lot of people don't realize that people want to help you. Like, it actually serves people's good karma and their egos and all of it.
You know, I had a case when I was by myself that I got from the beginning. And in hindsight now, looking back, I would have done it completely different. Although, you know, problems happened in that case that were beyond my control. But, you know, I did the right thing. And I brought in co-counsel that I thought, I mean, I didn't know who was who in the PI world. And then they abandoned me right before trial. They subbed out. Because they ended up shutting down. They were having their own partners. And here I am, you know, a solo in Orange County doing a trial against Disney, and I'm by myself. You know, I did reach out. I think I did call Bob back then, and Alder, and they all rejected the case and wouldn't jump in with me. I know now they probably would, but back then nobody would help me, and the judge denied my motion to continue trial, and I had to, you know, do that on my own and try to find witnesses on my own, and it was horrible. But the good thing that came out, I mean, it ended up settling after we picked a jury, which was great for the client, and we did get a ride. The ride changed. You know, there was a ride design change that happened because of the case. So good things happened, but I shouldn't have done that case by myself.
Oh my God, that would have aged me.
Yeah, it was stressful.
By the way, that's also very rude.
It is.
It's terrible. Shame on whoever did that to her.
Yeah.
I better not ever find out who you are.
I think they're retired, but yeah.
Lastly, what is one thing about you that most people who know you professionally do not know?
Oh God, there's a lot of things.
I came up with like 15 of them.
Yeah, you know.
I'm going to let you answer that question in a politically correct format.
Right. I don't know, because I don't really disclose a lot. I mean, to be honest, I feel like I'm an open book, but I'm not.
No, you're not.
My social media is really like just my political thinking and work. You know, I keep a lot of private things private until I explode. But, God, one thing.
She's Cuban.
Well, yeah.
A lot of you guys don't know that.
That's true. Okay, that's a good point.
She speaks fluent Spanish, which causes a look of shock on a lot of people's faces.
Es mi primer idioma.
It is. And she got us through Mexico that way. And she likes to say that Spanish is her first language, and we all know this, but her vocabulary is way better than most people who English is their first language, so I'm not trying to hear that. She's a karaoke beast.
Not as good as you.
But she was a karaoke beast. She was Miss Burbank. And if any of you guys, ladies out there, need some fashion tips or how to like...
No.
If I'm ever stuck in an apocalypse, I'm going with her. Because you are resourceful AF.
That I think does surprise a lot of people. I'm creative and resourceful.
You're extraordinarily creative.
Yeah.
Like, if you need someone to throw an event, like if Lourdes were not a lawyer, you should have been an event planner. You're extraordinarily detailed that way. She likes old school rap and hip hop and has
Wu-Tang.
artwork hanging in her home reflecting this.
Yep.
But there's a lot of pink that's laced in it, and she loves Coco Chanel.
I do. I mean, my living room has Tupac and Biggie Smalls with some Chanel in the middle.
Yeah, because if there were a way to marry those three,
Yep.
Lourdes has it down.
Yep.
Thank you so much for
No,
joining
thank you
me.
for having me. This was fun.
And
I'm very proud of you, you know, as your best friend, that you have this show and seen your growth from the time we were thrown together with Bertha Collins to, you know, our big verdict in McCallion, and, you know, just watching you grow as a trial attorney and as your best friend is like, oh, it's making my eyes water. It's spectacular, and I'm very excited for where you're going.
Thank you.
You know, if anybody can be a single mom and grow a business that, you know, I see you having, you know, hundreds of employees in the next couple of years, because your business is just going to be amazing.
Well, we have to if we're going to be like...
If we're going to own our own plane.
We're going to go back to Bali and... All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining this week's edition of Level Up with Laiken. Sending you lots of love, joy, and success this week. Take care, everybody. And thank you.
Thank you.